You know that feeling, that little voice in your head, even when you're trying to relax, watching a show maybe? It whispers, shouldn't you be doing something more productive right now? That nagging feeling you're not doing enough? Where does that come from? If that sounds familiar, you are absolutely not alone. Today, we're doing a deep dive into hustle culture. You know, that whole mindset of constant work, endless self improvement, always chasing success. Got a really fascinating stack of sources from a listener for this one. There's a super candid Reddit thread, an article that flat out says hustle culture is dead, and another digging into toxic productivity. So, our mission today, let's unpack where hustle culture came from, what it promised, and explore the impact it has, which is often pretty detrimental. And we'll also look at this global pushback that seems to be emerging. People looking for maybe a more balanced way to live. We're going to pull out the key insights, give you a shortcut to understanding this whole cultural thing. Okay, so let's get into it. What is hustle culture exactly, and how did it get such a powerful hold, especially on younger generations? The sources we looked at describe a really specific set of beliefs, practices too, almost like a playbook.
Yeah, you've really hit on the core questions there, and that playbook idea is spot on. Our sources definitely lay out these intense beliefs and practices. What's really fascinating, like you said, is how these messages got so widespread. It makes you ask, why did so many people buy into this philosophy? Because it wasn't just individuals deciding this. Companies were actively pushing it too.
That's a really important point. Explains a lot about why people bought in early on. The main idea, like our articles lay out, is being always on, sacrificing mornings, afternoons, evenings for, well, what some call performative workaholism.
Yeah.
You see it in those quotes from gurus like Gary Vee. He says things like, hustle is putting it all on the line. Or, you can punch me in the face 8,000 times. I'm here to get punched.
Mm.
He and others like Ty Lopez, they specifically say, don't waste your 20s partying or on vacation. Instead, you should work 15 plus hours a day. Seriously.
And the advice gets so specific. It's intense. Wake up at 4 a.m., they say. Read self-help for 2 hours. Meditate for 10 minutes. Take cold showers. Then work 8 hours on your quote-unquote online business. Spend another 2 hours learning marketing. And definitely avoid video games, Netflix, movies, drinks with friends, parties. Just listing it is exhausting.
Right. It sounds less like success and more like a recipe for total burnout.
Exactly. And it's all packaged up in what one article calls toxic productivity. The idea that ambition, grit, and hustle are the new holy trinity, and your entire worth is based on what you achieve professionally.
It creates the standard that feels almost impossible to meet, doesn't it? I mean, think about Marissa Mayer, former Yahoo CEO. She suggested 130-hour work weeks are doable if you're, quote, strategic about when you sleep, when you shower, and how often you go to the bathroom. And Elon Musk's famous tweet, nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week. Or Adam Newman from WeWork saying, your life should be about creating your life's work.
Yeah.
The whole narrative is basically being average is bad. It's unacceptable.
And this message spread so far, partly because it was often framed within this myth of meritocracy, this idea that absolutely anyone can succeed just through grind and grit alone.
Yeah.
You saw companies pushing this too, like Uber with its "you are your own boss" line,
Yeah.
or Just Eat promising a flexible opportunity.
Right. Customize it to your lifestyle, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly. It sells this dream that if you just work hard enough, stardom is yours. Especially with social media's influencer effect and that whole hashtag girl boss thing, constantly reminding you, you have the same amount of hours in a day as Beyonce. And it's really striking. The Reddit OP, the original poster, mentioned reading maybe 15, 20 self-help books, and they all had pretty much the same info. It just shows how deep these messages can get ingrained for so many of us.
Okay, so digging deeper, this is where the human cost starts to become really clear. What actually happens when the hustle promise falls flat? That Reddit post we looked at, it shows a really stark personal reality. It's actually quite tough to read.
And if we connect those personal stories to the bigger picture, it's obvious this isn't just about someone not trying hard enough or some individual failing. This system, well, it often benefits a very specific group much, much more than others. It creates a really uneven playing field.
Yeah, that Reddit OP describes feeling constant guilt. Guilt for not hustling. Even when they were just trying to relax or hang out with friends, they mentioned procrastination, feeling like a failure. And after 6 or 7 years of this, not hitting a single goal they'd set.
Wow, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, and that mindset became so ingrained, they said, that they still feel guilty watching TV or going on vacation, like they somehow don't deserve it because they didn't hit some target.
And so many other Reddit users chimed in, saying they felt the same, feeling not good enough, dealing with clinical depression, anxiety. People talked about really struggling to unlearn this whole culture, even feeling like a loser just for playing video games.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. And there's this personal account in one of our sources from a writer for her culture.
Yeah.
She talked about spending all of university and grad school basically hiding in the library, missing out on social life, memories, even just eating once a day as a sort of reward for working, which eventually led to her developing anemia. It just shows how far these pressures can push people.
And it's not just guilt or feeling bad. The sources point to really severe physical and mental health consequences, longer work hours, strongly linked to higher rates of depression and anxiety. That seems pretty clear. Plus, there's the stress hormone, cortisol. Increased production weakens your immune system, makes you get sick more often. And then there's that Japanese term karoshi. It means death from overwork.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's not just a concept, it's a grim reality. Apparently, there are like 200 claims filed for it every year in Japan. There's this awful example, Miwa Sato, a 31-year-old journalist. She died from heart failure after working 159 hours of overtime in 1 month.
159 hours, that's staggering and just so tragic.
It really is.
And hearing stats like that, it really drives home that this isn't simply about individual choices to work late. These are often the terrible outcomes of a culture that creates an environment where these extreme hours feel, well, almost unavoidable for some people. It leads to these devastating systemic failures. It's way beyond just personal burnout. A WHO study actually reported that 745,000 people died from overworking back in 2016.
745,000.
Yeah. And the pandemic just made things worse, right? Blurring those work-life lines, pushing people to work even longer hours. It really highlights this fundamental imbalance. David Heinemeier Hansen, he's the founder of Basecamp, he puts it bluntly. He says, the vast majority of people beating the drums of hustle mania are not the people doing the actual work. They're the managers, financiers, and owners.
That's such a crucial distinction because for wealthy people, working long hours might actually be a choice. They might see it as, a creative process or even the closest thing they have to fun, according to one source.
Right. A choice versus a necessity.
Exactly. Contrast that with the 44% of U.S. workers. That's 53 million people earning low wages. A third of them are near the poverty line. For them, hustling isn't some lifestyle choice. It's about survival, putting food on the table.
And that Her Culture article, it draws this really interesting parallel to Soviet-era propaganda, which also aimed to motivate labor. But there's a key difference now. Today's hustle culture emphasizes personal profit, even if the person doing the actual work isn't the one really profiting in the end. So ultimately, hustle culture fosters this assumption that one's value is inherently tied up with productivity rather than humanity, which is just deeply unsustainable and often really unfair.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us now? Thankfully, it seems the story isn't all doom and gloom and burnout. Our sources are pointing to a pretty significant shift, a kind of global renaissance of relaxation, as one article put it. People are pushing back.
Which raises a really important question for you listening right now. What idea are you supporting in your own life?
That's a powerful question. Really frames this whole thing, doesn't it? For so long, the default answer seemed to be hustle. But like we're seeing, that's changing. I mean, one of the biggest signs was the Great Resignation. Remember that? A massive 47.4 million Americans quit their jobs.
Yeah.
Alongside that, you had the rise of quiet quitting. People basically sticking to their job descriptions, rejecting that whole work has to be your life idea. And that trend just blew up on TikTok, interestingly.
Yeah, and Gen Z seems to be a major force behind this change. They're the first truly digitally native generation, described as progressive, pro-government, and activist-minded. They've grown up facing multiple crises, right? Health, systemic racism, economic issues. So they seem more comfortable challenging the status quo. They want to be part of the solution.
You can definitely see their influence. Those viral TikTok sketch comedies mocking old work norms like that line, "Respectfully, Susan, it's 2022. We're acting our wage, so don't give me extra work."
It's funny, but it's also a pretty bold rejection. It is. And this isn't just happening in the West. There are global movements, too.
Yeah.
In China, you have the Tang Ping or lying flat movement. It's this wave of solidarity against burnout and that brutal 996 work culture.
9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week?
Yeah, which was actually ruled illegal in 2021. So this lying flat isn't just laziness. It's a real statement against that kind of exploitation.
And Japan has something similar.
The Satori Sadai, they're Gen Z,
Yeah.
named after the Buddhist ideal of enlightenment. They're described as being sort of not interested in earning money, career advancement, and conspicuous consumption, a different set of priorities.
Interesting. And there's the soft life movement too among Black women, rejecting that strong Black woman stereotype, looking for peace first in all life aspects, and explicitly denouncing hustle culture as anti-soft living. These feel like really powerful, culturally specific ways of pushing back.
Definitely. And these shifts are also fueling different lifestyles and work models, like the rise of digital nomads. There are an estimated 35 million worldwide now. People actively seeking more laid-back lives, prioritizing experiences maybe over just climbing the career ladder.
Yet companies are noticing.
They are. More work from anywhere. Policies are popping up. Countries are even competing to attract nomads with special visas. They see this growing group.
It feels like part of this bigger rethink of the standard 9-to-5 workday, which, let's not forget, Henry Ford introduced way back in 1926.
Right. It's been a while.
And now you got over 100 companies in the UK that have made the 4-day work week permanent with full pay, focusing on employee well-being. It's a really clear signal that maybe the world's looking for a more sustainable, more human way to approach work and life. So, okay, for you listening, what does this all mean? How do you navigate this? You know, in a world that still has a lot of hustle culture messages floating around while also trying to carve out your own path.
Well, one of the most powerful ideas that came out of the sources was this concept of filling the empty buckets in your life. But not filling them with more work or addiction or whatever, filling them with worthwhile things. Things that actually bring you joy, fulfillment, real satisfaction.
That shift from just relentless doing to like purposeful joy, that feels like the real antidote. And the sources really stress that hustling doesn't make you happy. It's a simple statement, but profound, right?
Yeah.
One Reddit user said it really well. Time well wasted is not wasted time. Giving yourself permission to enjoy things like playing a game without that constant guilt. And it really hit home for another Redditor who shared that their mother, almost dying from COVID, was this huge wake-up call. It highlighted how much more important loved ones are than just endless achievement or making more money.
Yeah, those moments really put things in perspective. And this leads to fundamentally redefining productivity, setting goals that are actually yours. There was this great insight from one source saying something like, life isn't something to be achieved. It isn't in the things we do. It's actually with us all the time. And when we're alive, the best way to express life is live with a completely spontaneous attitude.
Wow. To really internalize that, especially when the world is constantly throwing external metrics at you, that's a massive shift. It means setting goals that actually line up with your values, not just chasing money or building an empire because someone else said you should.
Exactly.
And crucially, learning to just relax on that word should, that dangerous word, and making decisions based on what genuinely works for your life.
Precisely. And speaking of some practical ideas, a Reddit user mentioned this concept called jikomeyo. It translates roughly to self-honor. Think of it like designing your own personal bill of rights for your well-being, treating yourself with dignity, setting real boundaries that aren't negotiable, actively becoming the architect of our lives, as they put it. And it's framed as a choice you make every day, not just waiting for a feeling.
A conscious choice. I like that.
Because, as the sources warn, if something feels like a constant grind or hustle, you might be doing it wrong. Willpower won't last, one said. Joy, apparently, is the real limiting resource here, not time.
Joy, not time. That's interesting.
Yeah. And the advice then becomes surprisingly simple. Accept yourself for where you're at. Maybe even embrace being just average. Because, as one person put it, that's where the healing is at, letting go of that pressure.
So we've covered a lot. We looked at the demanding rules of hustle culture, the often hidden costs, mental and physical, and this really powerful global movement pushing back, aiming for a more human-centered way to work and live. From those raw Reddit confessions to these big societal shifts, it seems pretty clear people are rethinking what success and fulfillment actually mean to them.
Absolutely. And as you think about the potential trap of hustle culture, maybe remember that image of the anglerfish from Finding Nemo. Sometimes the shiny lure, the thing that seems like it'll fill a void right now, isn't actually what's best for us in the long run. Perhaps the deepest dive you can take, really, is into figuring out your own joy and purpose, separate from all the external noise and pressure